It is the 1st of May, so it's time for another monthly update video about all the things that went on in April that you might know about or might not know about, and all the things that we've got coming up in May, so you can put them on your calendar and participate in them. We've got a lot of great stuff coming up. Now, I always like to begin with 3 big things, and this time around, 2 of those big things have to do with the same sort or the same genre of matter. So big thing number 1, you may have seen me release the video for this yesterday. I am offering an 8-week intensive online Aristotle course, specifically on Aristotle and the moral virtues, looking at them in Nicomachean Ethics, books 2 through 6, supplemented by a few others. This is an excellent opportunity if you've ever wanted to study with me. We're going to do 90-minute class sessions every week. We're going to have discussion forums, all sorts of other cool stuff. I'll talk about that a little bit more in the May section, but I just want to put that on your radar. Big thing number 2, I haven't released this yet, but we're also doing, starting at the same day but a different time, meeting as well for 90-minute sessions, an online intensive class with me about René Descartes' meditations and the Objections and Replies. Major work of modern Western philosophy. If you've ever wanted to study Descartes and you want an expert guide, well, you might consider registering for that class. Big thing number 3, I'm going to be doing a lot more writing this month. I have some projects having to do with book stuff. I'm also getting ready for 2 conferences, but I'll be doing a lot of writing in Medium, which is a website that I publish my shorter pieces for, popular philosophy on. Sometimes I get pretty technical with it, but for the most part, it's for ordinary readers. And I'm going to be doing a lot more of that now that the semester is at an end. So now let's talk about April. April has long since been kind of a tough month, in part because as an academic, I'm doing a lot of grading and guiding students through their last few weeks of class so that they can avoid failing and get all their work in. But in the Sadler Shaka household, it's also a time where we had some significant losses in our 4-legged family. 3 years ago, it was Amika, our old girl dog, who was 14 years old, who finally passed away. And then last year, it was the sole survivor, the sassy cat, 19 years old, who finally died, actually almost in my arms. She started dying in my arms, and then we put her down and put her on her bed and, petted her and comforted her as she passed away. So that's, kind of a melancholy time to remember. But, it's also a good time to see all these great memories that we have of the animals that we've loved, and maybe to spend some time as well taking care of other animals. Now, I mentioned classes are coming to a close, so that's a lot of work on the academic front. I'm buried in grading right now for my Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design classes. Marquette is going to end in May, so a lot going on there. I also did a lot of events in April. I did my AMA, that's Ask Me Anything. We held our Understanding Anger both in the online class, and then we recorded the class session and did a video premiere so people who aren't enrolled in the class could also participate. We got kind of a double whammy with that. I, did a Wisdom for Life episode with my friend and colleague Dan, specifically about AIs and large language models. We did a video, a self-directed study, this time on the Cynic School, had a lot of great participation in that. And also I presented at the Wisconsin Philosophical Association on the topic, what is public philosophy, making what we call a pluralist proposal about that. And I'll talk more about that in the May section. I went on 4 different podcasts or shows to talk as a guest, being interviewed about particular things. We had Acid Horizon at the beginning of April talking about anger, stoicism, ancient philosophy. The Anagage podcast where they're asking me about teaching in prisons, how I got started, all of those sorts of things. Radio Uninvited, and then finally finishing up the month with Embodied Dialogue. And I'll put links to all of those. Just click the show more and you can see exactly where we did all these sorts of things. What else did we do? Well, a lot of videos. I actually got another one of those Ideas That Matter interview videos with Jonathan B. about René Girard. That's a good one. I did a Sadler's Stories about a drive that I had to take. I mentioned the Understanding Anger. And I shot core concept videos for my classes, but also for all of you on Marcus Aurelius, John Cassian, and Seneca. The Marcus Aurelius, his meditations, John Cassian, the stuff from anger in book 8 of his Institutes, and then Seneca was on the shortness of life. That was for my philosophy, mindfulness, and life class. I also did quite a bit of podcast work, releasing podcast episodes on Blaise Pascal's Pensées, on Aristotle's Rhetoric, Book 2, discussions of anger and calmness, and on Lactantius's On the Anger of God. By the way, I have early released nearly all of those Lactantius episodes to my Patreon supporters. So if you'd like to get in on early releases, which I do pretty routinely with my podcast stuff, they get to hear it before the general public does, sometimes days, sometimes weeks in advance. So that's something that's a nice perk for them. The last thing I'll mention, so I talked about Medium, right? This month I actually got quite a bit of writing done on Medium, and there was something else that was pretty cool that happened. I'm now the verified author of my 2011 book, Reason Fulfilled by Revelation, the 1930s Christian philosophy debates in France. So it takes a little while before they do verify you. I wrote 2 pieces on Epictetus, commentary on Enchiridion chapter 12 and chapter 13. I also added another Seneca's Lessons on Anger Management, number 3 in there. Expect the unexpected. I wrote a piece about Marcus Aurelius's reminders to himself, 7 reminders to help keep your cool, not get ticked off at everybody. I also did a few things that were sort of resource-oriented, one about Epicurean reading recommendations. If you actually want to study Epicureanism, you might follow that and check it out and see whether that helps you out. And I also did something about the self-directed study. I thought it was time to put all the self-directed study resources in one place so people could easily access them and use them to help themselves out as they engage in studying philosophy. I also did a photo-oriented one about Sassy the cat, time that we spent outdoors in the parks here in Milwaukee, wandering around, in her harness, on her leash, and even in her grandmother's yard. And then I also did one on ChatGPT and what ChatGPT could tell us about Borges' story, Tlan, Ukbar, Orbius, Tertius, which, by the way, has some implications for large language models and all that sort of stuff. And it turns out ChatGPT, not very good at figuring those things out, because obviously it doesn't figure anything out. So that is what went on during the month of April. Now let's talk about May. We have a lot of really cool events coming up, some in person, some online during the month of May. Let me remind you that all of the times that I'm giving here are Central Time, so you do want to check out your time zone, and you can find links to all of these things below in the video description. Also on the Reason.io event calendar, and generally for most of these, also on my Facebook page under events. So we kick off the month in just a few days with a local event here at the Frank Weinberg Library in Mequon, Wisconsin, in the greater Milwaukee area. Philosophers in the Midst of History. We're going to be having our medieval session for May, and I'm going to be discussing Saint Bonaventure, the great Franciscan, who played such a major role in shaping the Franciscan order. So we'll be talking about that. That's always a great time, great questions from the audience. On the 6th, which is Saturday at noon, we'll have our regularly scheduled AMA, that's Ask Me Anything session for about 90 minutes. I will do my best to answer questions that people ask me. Sometimes I have to say pass, but most of the time I have something to say. Following that, on the 6th at 2 p.m., for Patreon supporters, I will be having a more exclusive philosophy chat. That is a video conferencing where we get to discuss whatever is on people's minds for about an hour. So if you want to get in on that, you probably want to become a Patreon supporter. On the 7th, that's that following Sunday at 11 a.m., I will be having another story time with Sadler. I'll be reading one of my favorite short stories, Graham Greene's The Hint of an Explanation, about a little boy and being tempted by a local guy in town not to do anything sexual, but something sacrilegious. So that might be of interest to some of you. On the 10th, that's a Wednesday at 5 p.m., we'll have our public Hegel Q&A and discussion session, video conferencing online. You can join in and ask questions about Hegel, German idealism, philosophy more broadly, and I will do my best to answer them. Following that, on the 13th at noon, starting at noon, because there's two parts to this, we'll have the next Worlds of Speculative Fiction series session, and it's on Kim Stanley Anderson's Mars Trilogy. We're finishing up by looking at the massive Blue Mars, the longest book in the series. And following that, I'll be, shooting a video, doing a premiere, answering questions while the video premieres. Then we'll have a video conferencing session so that anybody who's interested can chat about that work, Kim Stanley Anderson, or speculative fiction more generally. On the 20th, at noon, we'll be having our Understanding Anger class. So if you want to get in on that class session where we're going to be discussing anger in Homer's Iliad, lots and lots of anger going on there. The whole thing actually begins with anger, doesn't it? Tell me, O Muse, of the wrath of Achilles. So if you want to get in on that, that's a free online class that you have to register for. And once you do, you get the Zoom link and you can join us for the discussion. Then now this is the big deal, on the 25th at 10 a.m. and then at 1 a.m., those two online classes with me, one on Aristotle on the moral virtues, the other on Descartes' meditations, those are beginning. And you can sign up for them ahead of time. You can sign up for them the day of if you want to, although I wouldn't wait around because there are resources within the class sites that you might want to make use of. There is a cost for them, but I've kept them as inexpensive as possible so as to allow a lot of people to participate. And you're going to be able to study with somebody who has been reading and working on these texts for more than 2 decades. So those are going to be pretty major. On the 26th, we have another local event here right in the downtown at the Women's Club of Wisconsin. We'll be doing our Philosophy Eats. If you're interested in that, you need to contact the Women's Club because they're the ones who handle all of the scheduling for that. I just come and give the talk, and then we have a nice dinner and conversation. This time around, we're going to be talking about Nietzsche and nihilism. So really interesting stuff going on. And then we will be finishing up the month on the 27th at noon with another self-directed study video. This time it's going to be about David Hume and how you can most productively study his philosophy. So that's all the events that are going on in May. What else is happening? As I mentioned, we've got these cool online classes. I will also be bringing out some other things that are not synchronous online classes meeting for 90-minute class sessions, but rather work at your own pace classes as well in the Study with Sadler Academy and in some other places as well. So keep an eye out for that. Video stuff. I did shoot a half-hour Hegel video last month, released it to my Patreon supporters of the project, and I'll be releasing it to the public fairly shortly. I also need to do the book review videos that I keep meaning to get to in this month of May, now that I'm not going to be teaching classes except for finishing up the Marquette class and, of course, doing my online classes. I should be able to get some book reviews done that I've been waiting for. I also plan to do some more Ideas That Matter interview videos, probably at least 2 of those. I also want to do some more Sadler Stories videos. I've been planning to do a meme roundup for a while. I might also do one of those fake quotes videos. We'll see if I have the time for that. And then I do want to follow up with the majoring in philosophy. Is that a good idea at this point in time? I want to update that video. I'm going to be doing some core concept stuff on Seneca's On Anger, on Aquinas's arguments about the existence of God in the Summa Theologia. And then I plan this month to get to something I've been wanting to do for quite a while, more speculative fiction studies videos on Philip K. Dick. And a long time ago, I did a poll, asking people who they wanted me to do. Or what novel, rather, and Man in the High Castle blew all the others out of the water. So I'm going to be doing some speculative fiction studies on that novel, Man in the High Castle. I've got some podcast stuff that I'll be doing as well, continuing the series on Lactantius. I've also got, stuff that I need to do on the Cynic epistles, written by Pseudocrates. And I'll probably also do those Marcus Aurelius videos that I did recently. I'm going to start converting those over into Sadler's Lectures podcast episodes. And I'll be doing a lot of writing in Medium, perhaps in some other venues as well. So a lot going on in May. I hope that you have a great month and that you can join me for some of these online events, and that some of you will consider enrolling in these 8-week summer classes that I've got coming up on Aristotle and the Moral Virtues and on René Descartes' Meditations, Objections, and Replies. So that's it for this update video. Hopefully I'll see you somewhere in the interwebs, and have a great month.